You have paid rent for 11 years, on time, every time. The man who owns the building has never learned your name. Tonight he raises it by $200, and you will pay that too. There are 7 files on a desk somewhere tonight. You are in one of them. You don't know which one yet. Neither does he, not really. He knows the number attached to your name, and the number is the only part of you he's ever actually met. Tier 1. Zoller. You fill out the application at 11 p.m. because the listing went up 4 hours ago, and you've learned that speed matters more than presentation. Full legal name, current address, income, references, a $50 non-refundable application fee that disappears the moment you hit submit, whether you get the apartment or not. You don't see what happens next. A company you've never heard of pulls a report on you. Not your credit score, something adjacent to it, and worse, a tenant screening score built from eviction filings. No matter how old, no matter how resolved, rental payment history sold quietly by your last 3 landlords, and a risk algorithm that was never explained to you and that you have no legal right to see in full. You don't get to read your own file. The landlord does. Your cosigner is your mother again, the 3rd time in 4 years, and you feel the specific shame of asking her to put her name behind yours one more time, of hearing her say yes before you've even finished the sentence, the way she always does. The deposit is first month, last month, and a security deposit, 3 numbers that add up to more than you have. So you don't apply to the place you actually want. You apply to the place that only asks for 2. Your friend Marisol is apartment hunting the same week, same city, same price range. She has a cosigner too, but her screening report comes back with an old address flag from a roommate situation that wasn't even her lease. A clerical error nobody bothers to fix because fixing it isn't anybody's job but hers. She gets denied twice before she gets approved once, and each denial costs her another $50 fee that doesn't come back. You get denied once. You don't ask why. The portal just says, "Thank you for your interest," and the listing disappears from the site an hour later, already reposted, already collecting the next round of $50 fees from the next round of people who won't be told why either. The first rule, at $0, you are not applying to live somewhere. You are applying to be scored by a system that will never show you the scorecard. Tier 2, 10,000. You get approved this time, barely, and you don't find out what barely means until you read the lease addendum line by line at your kitchen table. A risk premium, $60 a month, itemized nowhere, folded into the base rent so quietly that the listing price and the price you actually pay are 2 different numbers, and only one of them was advertised. You call to ask about it. The leasing office tells you it's standard, that everyone at your qualification tier pays it, and you realize for the first time that you have a tier that it has a name inside their system, even if it doesn't have one on your lease. You are not a person to them yet. You are a bracket. Marisol gets her second denial round now. The clerical error is still uncorrected, and takes an apartment through a smaller landlord who doesn't use the big screening companies. A landlord who still meets tenants in person and decides with his gut instead of an algorithm. She pays more in rent for less square footage because the fear of a third denial outweighs the math. You start paying your rent 2 days early every month. Not because you have to, but because you've read that early payment history feeds back into the same systems that almost kept you out. That somewhere a number is quietly recalculating itself in your favor every time you're not late. The second rule, 10,000 doesn't get you approved. It gets you approved with a surcharge for the version of you the system still doesn't fully trust. Tier 3, 75,000. Something shifts. Not dramatically. You still fill out applications, still get screened, still pay deposits, but the leasing agent calls you back within the hour instead of the usual 3-day silence. Your file moves to the top of a stack you didn't know existed. 2 buildings want you now, not just one. The second one offers a free month to make sure you pick them over the first. A small bidding war you didn't ask to start and don't fully understand the mechanics of, except that you can feel the direction the power has started to move. just barely, just for the first time. You mentioned this to Marisol over coffee. She's still with the smaller landlord, still paying above market because the alternative felt too risky 2 years ago. And she does the math out loud, the way people do when they're trying to make a bad number feel smaller by saying it casually. You don't say anything about your two competing offers. It feels like something you shouldn't mention. The same way you never mentioned the risk premium disappearing off your last renewal like it was nothing. You take the second building's offer, not because it's better, but because being chosen instead of choosing changes something in how you walk into the leasing office, how you don't flinch anymore when they ask for your screening report. The third rule, at $75,000, you stop being screened and start being recruited. The paperwork is identical. The posture behind it is not. Tier 4, 250,000. You stop renting apartments and start renting decisions. The unit itself matters less than what you can walk away from. A lease with a 30-day out clause instead of the usual 60. A building that lets you break early without the penalty everyone else pays. Because the leasing manager has learned that tenants like you don't disappear owing money. They disappear because they got a better offer somewhere else. And better offers are good advertising even when they cost you a tenant. Your renewal letter arrives with a rent increase half the size of your neighbor's. Not because you asked, but because retention algorithms have started treating you as a cost to keep rather than a risk to screen. Nobody explains this to you either. You just notice the number is smaller than it should be, and you don't ask why, because asking why has never once gotten you an honest answer from any of these systems. Marisol's landlord sells the building that year. New owners, a rent increase that isn't negotiable for tenants at her tier. And she starts the application process again from the beginning, cosigner and all, 4 years after the first time. You watch her go through it and recognize every step. Remember exactly what the $50 fee felt like, leaving an account that couldn't afford it. You help her with the application this time, not with money, just with knowing which questions to ask the leasing office that she wouldn't know to ask herself. It's a small thing. It means something anyway. The fourth rule, 250,000 doesn't buy you a nicer apartment. It buys you exit clauses nobody else on your floor was offered. Tier 5, $1,000. You meet the owner, not the manager, for the first time in your renting life. He shakes your hand at a building tour like you're evaluating him as much as he's evaluating you, which, you realize partway through the conversation, you actually are. The screening process barely happens this time. A phone call, a reference from your previous building, and an understanding that the paperwork exists mostly for legal cover rather than actual risk assessment. Nobody mentions a tenant screening score. You suspect, correctly, that they never pulled one. You ask about the risk premium you paid at $10,000, half joking, testing whether he'll even know what you're talking about. He says most tenants at your level don't pay one, that landlords compete for tenants who pay on time and stay long, and you realize the number that once cost you $60 a month has become a line item. Other people pay so that people like you don't have to. The fifth rule, at $1,000, access replaces paperwork. You stop being evaluated by a system and start being evaluated by a person who has a reason to want you to say yes. Tier 6, 10,000. You become the landlord. Not symbolically. Actually, a small multi-family building you bought as an investment, 4 units, tenants who fill out applications that get reviewed by a screening company you now pay for. On the other side of a system you spent years inside of. Your property manager sends you a denial to approve routine, a tenant screening score that flags an old eviction filing from 6 years ago. No context provided, explanation of what happened. Just a number below the cutoff you set without fully understanding what the cutoff meant when you set it. You think about Marisol's clerical error, the roommate's lease that wasn't hers, the $50 fee that didn't come back. You pull the actual filing instead of trusting the score. It was a landlord who never fixed a broken heater and evicted a tenant for withholding rent over it. A filing that says nothing about whether someone pays on time, only that they once fought back against something that deserved fighting. You approve the application. Your property manager is surprised. You don't explain why, mostly because you're not sure you could, without also explaining the version of yourself that once got denied for reasons a portal never bothered to give you. The sixth rule: at $10,000, you stop being scored by the system and start deciding quietly how much power to give it over somebody else. Tier 7, 100 inward and beyond. You own the building that rejected your first application, 11 years later, purchased almost by accident, part of a larger portfolio deal that included a dozen properties you'd never set foot in. You don't notice the address until you're reviewing the closing documents. And when you do, you sit with it for a long moment before saying anything to anyone. The current tenants have no idea. The building has new paint, a renovated lobby, a different leasing company handling day-to-day operations. Nobody there remembers a $50 application fee from over a decade ago. A denial with no explanation. A listing that disappeared and reappeared within the hour. You could change something structural if you wanted to. Waive application fees, forbid the risk premium, require every denial to come with an actual reason. You think about it. You're not sure yet whether you will, because owning the system and reforming the system turn out to be two very different decisions, and only one of them is as simple as writing a check. The seventh rule: the ladder doesn't end with you owning the building. It ends with you deciding what kind of owner the building deserved all along. There are 7 files on a desk somewhere tonight. One of them belongs to someone who has paid rent for 11 years on time every time, and whose landlord has never learned their name. Somewhere in that file is a number nobody explained to them, attached to a person nobody bothered to meet. They think the number is about their credit, their income, their history. It's not really. It's about whether the system decides they're worth being known. And at every level of wealth and every file and every desk, that's the only question that was ever actually being asked.